So, welcome back to part two of our podcast of Secondsies³. And this, of course, being our first episode for you. And we were just discussing in part one our critique about a piece of music called Ave Verum Corpus by William Byrd. And our country or territory in focus, in this case, it's a city-state, is Vatican City. So if you did not catch the first part of this video, go back to the first part of this video before seeing the second part, because other than that, you're going to miss a lot of principles and background and critique that we have presented. So that is just our little disclaimer, unless you're only here for the debate, in which case, enjoy yourself. So we're going to start with our question and answer, which is where everybody can ask a question. And then we will go into our discussion / debate point. Now we are taking this more from a French point of view or some other cultures where the point of the debate is not to win. It's mainly to discuss or to explore the point of views being offered by the others. And then we'll go into our next sections. So I would like to invite one of you guys to ask your first question.
I have a question for Jess.
Okay.
Okay, so I kind of touched on this in our previous episode, but like after going through everyone's ratings, I'd really love to hear you expand more on your view on the marketability and appeal of the performance that we watched.
1 second. Sorry, I forgot to do this. Pause a second. Sorry about this. So just for everyone in the audience to know who wasn't here for the first video, this is produced by Alma Pictures LLC with your hosts, Ayla Hadi, Jessica Galletta, and myself, Allison Weaver. So go ahead, Jess, you can answer.
Okay. So I had a pretty harsh critique about the marketing appeal. So I guess what was your question explicitly? Like just why I came to that conclusion, or what were you curious about?
Yeah, kind of like why you came to that conclusion, just wanting to hear that fleshed out more.
Oh, of course. So my that particular rating, my heart, I guess giving it a lower rating as far as like cultural appeal or market appeal comes from, I feel like we are very academic in our conversations, but as far as like how I actually engage with culture in my actual everyday life, it's very, very now. And I'm very in tune with the younger generations, especially like Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And I'm thinking of how it would appeal to the way that they engage with culture right now. And it's great for an educational thing, but I do think that, and it's not saying that it isn't like they don't value intellectual content, because they absolutely do, but the way to deliver it to them is, I mean, they're also very young right now, like Gen Alpha, they're all in like fifth grade. So it's like they're literal children. I do think that, and if you think about the way that, and maybe this is purely Western, maybe in other cultures it's different, but in like global commercial, like if we're talking about commercial appeal, I do think that it has to be a little bit flashier. I do think that you have
You mean like general
it has
appeal?
to,
You mean like general appeal?
yeah, like I do,
Okay.
I like, we're going like contemplative and meditative. I do think like there should be some form, and I think that you could bring that to younger people or to our like the current, popular appeal to like right
Mhm.
now, like the, I guess like the lowest common denominator, like the broadest appeal is by creating a transcendent kind of experience, which is a different type of meditation, like transcendental meditation. And
Mhm.
I feel like I feel like collectively we are in a very, I feel like people favor that kind of contemplation, like something that takes us out of body, something that's hyper stylized. It's grounded in reality, but it's like hyper realism. So
Awesome.
this, so I was hard. So that's why I was I appreciated the appeal of this piece and the version we watched and the arrangement because I also appreciate the academic side and the academic perspective. And also, there is a part of me that I do like that. I'm pretty dry as far as the things that appeal to me. But also I do like to feel hype about I like culture and very especially recently in my life, and maybe this is just like my need for things to like hype me up. So I do
Mhm.
seek like dopamine rush type of like a hype, like let's go out there, like being very much in the world. So Catholicism and Christianity as a whole has always been like, let's be in the world but not of the world. But I also think that there's room for Catholicism to be in the world and to be in right now. And I just because I notice this when I go to Catholic services, it's just like the people that go, it's like they feel like they go because they have to, but it's like they're not compelled to go. And I think
Mhm.
there needs to be, and I love like from 4 centuries ago these hymns and Gregorian chants, and they're beautiful. Like medieval Catholicism, the medieval times, there was so much innovation with Catholicism, and I feel like
Yeah.
since then, or maybe
This is
like
one thing I'll debate you on
recently, I
later.
would say, yeah, and I guess it depends on where. And maybe this is my experience, my own very specific experience as my own experience with Catholicism.
Mhm.
I do think that, and I think we are on a press. I think we're on the verge of something, which is going to be really exciting to see. I just think that maybe like from coming of age in like the 90s and early 2000s, it was a little bit milk toast to me. So there wasn't much innovation. And I do think we should, and heritage is so important, but I'm really hungry for people to just make up new things
Mhm.
and just play and be
Yeah.
creative
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
that's what they were doing at that time when they made these pieces. So
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
it was all and also and obviously there's universal appeal and we can still do that as artists today. I'm just like we're so much about like recreating or rebooting things. I'm just like I want someone to
You want
just
something
make
fresh.
something new.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I feel like you could make these hymns fresh too. And I just think the
Yeah.
way there's a lot of innovation happening in the music world right now and music production that could be like played with, even just vocally. If you just did voices, because I love just
Mhm.
the voice as an instrument and just the type of choral arrangements. I think there's a lot to play with. And I think that would really get a lot of appeal and attention on a more public appeal if it just experimented and just like almost shock value, but just something that took you out of yourself for like a split second. Like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I
fair.
feel like this is kind of like a little bit of a tangent, but like what you were describing earlier of what you wanted this piece to be, as
Uh-huh.
opposed to what it actually is, for some reason, it kind of like, especially when what you said in regards to what like younger generations are now looking for, within music. It reminded me generally of Florence and the Machine Ceremonials album,
Mm.
but in particular her song No Light No Light, where there's like drama, there's like this big crescendo, like even like the music video, it felt very Catholic, but like very big and grandiose.
Mm. That's fair. So let's go to the next question so we don't get onto a debate train quite yet. So so like because we can do that in a minute. But go ahead, Ayla, you can give your question.
Let's do another
Okay,
one.
I have a question for you. I had touched upon this in episode 1, in terms of like the symbolism and
Part
the
one, yeah.
lighting. So, sorry.
Part one, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, part 1. So, I noticed that with the lighting, there was a candle placed in front of each singer, one candle at chest level and one on the ground in front of them. And then, there was like just interesting lighting happening with like this shaft of light illuminating the middle arch behind them all. And like I said, that I could sense that there was symbolism happening, but because I did not grow up Catholic, I fear that, most of it went over my head. So my question to you is, do you agree that there is symbolism in that? And if you wanted to like further, explain or talk about this particular subject.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually a really important point. I do believe there is a lot of symbolism, and I'll try to walk the audience through it so that if they want to watch it, they can see it for themselves. So, of course, this is a really foundational principle in Catholic faith, which is to use signs in sacred spaces, which show the invisible realities. So that's kind of like what we went through in the beginning when we talked about their artistic principles. And specifically, the idea that the sensible world is intelligible in liturgy or art, and that it points to something beyond yourself. So you're right that there is, and the signs and sacraments are their instruments for the Catholics that show and reveal something outside of oneself, something divine. So in the case here, we have the person, and according to Catholics, would be a body soul unity, and worship engages both the mind, body, and soul. So for this, it's not just light is not just an ambiance, and it actually is supposed to help the soul connect or ascend to communicate with the divine, in this case, God. So a candle placed at chest height before the singer is a very important sign. Chest level is the heart, the seat of the will and love. And the light, of course, being divine illumination, which would be the what when God speaks or gives insight into the soul, according to them. And for ground level, that would be the pathway, which would echo Psalm 119. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And this creates a vertical symbolism from the ground, pilgrimage or journey, through to the heart, which is conversion or change, to the vault, which you saw, the arch, which would be eschatology, which is the overall principle. So for the eschatology part, I can never pronounce that word right, so academic. But each singer is representing not just an individual, a member of the body of Christ, or the whole of Catholics around the world and Christ followers. And so this repetition of identical candle placements is not just personal spotlighting, but it's a part of how they bring unity to the piece, and it shows participation in the shared mystery. And so finally, if we look at the arch, that is a focal point, and they're in the choir. And so this is a representation of transition from earth to heavenly realm. And by illuminating the arch, the director is showing the moment of the sacred time breaking into our time, or the sacred breaking into the physical reality of somebody. And so this shows how the Gothic architecture, specifically French and in Italian, uses light as a medium, not to show the structure, but to reveal something invisible. So the whole point of having minimal light is also for that. So hopefully that helps.
I also really like that interpretation because it's something that really resonates with me as well. It's the idea of having a minimal setup, because instead of just like being so on the nose with things, it's almost like you have to pay attention to get the full experience and the full gravity of what is being presented, instead of having someone just like hold your hand through it and explain it to you like you're 5.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which I think a lot of contemporary culture, especially commercially, is very much like that. And it can be, I feel like sometimes it rots my brain. Like sometimes I just want to experience things and just sit in it and not have to have that mean anything beyond, well, it means a lot, but just like instead of being told like my experience, like this is the correct experience you're supposed to have, and this is the da, 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 and this is what we want you to think. So I really like that interpretation. I like that that's how they curated, and I value that minimal approach,
Mm,
simplicity.
mm.
Because if the art is good, it speaks for itself. Like good stuff, it'll sell itself. Not sell, but if it's like if it's good, if the quality is there, if the skill is there, you don't have to throw in all this extra like bells and whistles. Like it will just you can just like simplicity is less is more.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So now we'll have one question for you, Ayla. So
Hmm.
we're gonna have a little question from me, I think, unless Jess wanted to ask
I
her a
have a question
question.
too. I
Go
do have a
ahead.
question actually.
Oh, do you
Okay,
mind
so
two questions? Ayla,
huh?
do you
What?
Oh,
mind
I
two
don't
questions?
mind. I don't know.
Okay, so
Okay.
just go
Yeah,
ahead
I do
since
have
you
a
were just
question for
talking. You
Ayla.
can give yours first.
So my question for Ayla is I'm actually curious about when you said that you thought it had a cultural appeal to the global south or a commercial appeal because it really appeals to global south tastes. So I would love to hear to be elucidated on what exactly that is. And I asked this question because A, I'm curious, and B, that's really important because the majority of the Catholic base currently in 2025 is the global South. So,
Mhm.
according to Allison, what she told me, and I found
Yep.
to also be true when
Do
I
your own research.
looked into it.
Yeah.
So, that's really, even though I mean, yeah, I think because the global South, like Asia, Africa, South America, a lot of non-white cultures, especially non-Western even. So I'm curious to like have some specifics on what you mean by that. Because I also would
Yeah.
like to know more about what that cultural perspective is and like what what gets them going. What
Let's keep them going.
Sure. So this is just all very anecdotal on my part. I think like people who live in northern states of the United States might have more of a what's the word, relationship or uh knowledge of Catholics and how Catholics operate. Um, where I live, it's more Baptist central. So whenever I would meet or befriend a Catholic, it was kind of a special treat and like finding like looking at through things at a different light, just because it is kind of a pretty significant difference of world perspectives from what I
Mm-hmm.
noticed. Um, so I also, through them, have heard quite a bit about what the Catholic community is like in the United States and the different, like, I guess, cultures and subsections happening within the community, whether it's like born again Catholics or people who grew up Catholic and fell out and then came back again. Or people with like the joke about like, oh, I have all the Catholic guilt but like none of the devotion type of thing, like that. Yeah, those type of jokes. So that's kind of what I have learned from the American perspective. Um, but because of like my cultural background, like I did, but at least my family had a fair bit of interaction with like more like orthodox approaches or like Catholic communities in the Middle East or North Africa, and that approach is also different and the way people view Catholicism is
Yeah.
different in that part of the world. So would I feel like the Tallis scholars would have a huge turnout and interest in the United States or, even within certain European countries? No. But if they were to go to Nigeria, the Philippines, India, I know people like
Oh
were
yeah.
commenting with the Pope's funeral that there were so many Indians there, but like there's a fair amount of Indian Catholics. And
A
so
lot.
like if
A lot.
yeah, there's a lot. So like if they were to go perform in those countries, or even Mexico, like I feel like they would be welcomed with excited open arms. And that's kind of where I was coming from with my take on their kind of mass appeal situation. And I wasn't looking at it from like a Gen Alpha, Gen Z perspective. I was definitely thinking more millennial, Gen X, boomer type situation.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually think that's interesting because what you brought up with Catholics being, it's very north, especially mid-Atlantic, like Boston area. I don't know. It's like very north, not like very Yankee. The Southern Catholics, it's cool that that's experience. I also think because they're also Southern, like Southern culture, Southern, like religion in the South, people's devotion to religion is its own thing. And I think when you have someone from the South who's also Catholic, it is a special breed of Catholic. They are a beautiful minority and they have a very interesting experience and perspective, a very niche approach. I think it's a very niche experience. It's fun because they're also Southern at the end of the day. So it's like the
Mm-hmm.
Southern Baptist like zealousness in Catholicism. Uh, and I do think the global South, a lot of the way they engage with it's very different. I mean, Catholicism is such a global religion, so the way it's practiced is reflective of wherever it's practiced, of the culture
Mm-hmm.
there. And I think because the United States was originally Great Britain, which had a lot of anti-Catholic sentiment, Catholicism in the
Maybe.
United States kind of formed under that as like
Mm-hmm.
in kind of pushing back and more about preservation and more about keeping traditions alive. And I think that in the global South, where also a lot of colonization happened from Catholic countries, and
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of conversion. Some of it was organic, some of it was not. It was not consensual,
Mm-hmm.
but they would convert in name and then keep their indigenous ethno-religious practices. So the types of Catholicism, especially depending on which continent you're at in the global South,
Mm-hmm.
it's very much like if it's South America, like especially like Mexican Catholic. If you just
North
type in like
America,
Mexican
dear,
Catholic,
according to
huh?
Latin. Mexico is still North America according to Latins.
Oh, sorry.
Just saying.
Okay,
I want to
Latin
be very
America,
clear
like
because people will be very annoyed.
Yeah.
oh,
Latin
I don't want to do
American.
that then. So
Yeah.
Latin American and Mexican,
There
like
we go.
Latin American
That's
specifically,
better.
like Peru,
Mm-hmm.
Brazil, those are big, but also Latin America in general. So there's a very, because if you look about the history of Spanish colonization and how that shaped that part of the world
Yeah.
ethnically and culturally, you see that very prevalent in Catholicism, where it's like the way it's almost like Catholicism, it's not an ethno religion technically, but like in Latin America, it almost is.
Yeah.
Depends where you're
Yeah.
going and depending on who you're talking to. The religion.
Exactly. But I'm saying like the religion, like Catholicism itself isn't, but there's a lot of uh, eth- um, sorry, ethno-religious indigenous practices. So even though I'm Catholic, if I were to travel to a certain country and see like I feel like I would be a guest or an outsider to
Yes,
certain.
because every place has their own interpretation of things because that's
Yeah.
they're the sacramentals. So those are like external to the core. Yeah, I feel
Yeah,
you.
and
Yeah.
that's true in Africa, North Africa, all of Africa and Asia. like Catholics in the different continents. And I think because Europe, I mean, it's the OG. That's where Catholicism comes from. But it's
Even that
also
is
been a
variation as well. Each region, each
exactly,
country.
exactly. And there's schisms within Catholic history. There's Eastern Catholic Church.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
But we're
so
not getting into the
they're all
specifics.
kind of, we all have the same origin and like kind of from the same origin point, but then disagreements happen to a point where they branched out. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I think that's actually really interesting because I just wanted to say that and nerd
Yeah, thank
out
you for sharing that.
on.
No, it's
So,
true. Like, especially in the South, like when, like not always, but whenever the Muslim kids and the Catholic kids would link up, it was very much like, oh, let's commiserate together because
right.
the Baptists who run this town view us all as heretics.
Mhm.
And so, like, there was actually this funny situation where there was this guy who would continuously try to give me comic books about, like Muslims trying to
Evangelizing
take
some
over the
Baptists.
world and
Oh,
we're
no.
going to hell and blah blah blah. And so one of my friends was like, "Hang on, what other comic books do you have in your backpack?" And so we had a Catholic friend with us. She's like, "Do you have anything about Catholics?" He's like, "I sure do." And it's like a comic book detailing about how Catholics are heretics and like, so that was kind of like a bonding point for the Muslim and Catholic kids in the South, honestly. But yeah, it's definitely like a different perspective. And like I said, coming like from my family background, like my great grandparents, my grandparents, their neighbors were presumably like members of the oldest like Christian and Catholic communities in the world, just because of like, where
Right, where they
Christianity
were
kind of
coming from.
came
Yeah.
about. Yeah. So it's like a very like, I guess, a different perspective on Catholics than, like someone in northeastern states or even here in the South would have.
Yeah, that's fair. So
Yeah.
one more question for you, dear. This one is easy.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a trick question. So obviously, because all three of us have some very different points of view about everything, which is perfectly
Mm-hmm.
perfect for this podcast. Um, I know you mentioned like the meditative point of view of the piece. And so I found that very interesting that we all commented on the same point. But for you, like you mentioned it did things to your mind when you were listening. So in your point of view, like what kind of things did it achieve for your mind? Was it calming? Like what kind of feelings did it evoke for you? That I'm just very curious because everyone has different experiences with the piece. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's one of the enduring qualities of the piece.
So, I mean, it's actually like pretty
If you're
simple. So
comfortable
my
to
brain
share. Yeah.
works very, very fast. A lot of times, like my brain and my mouth, like the speeds do not match up. So my brain is like firing 1,000 miles a minute and it's just not getting to like the words out of my mouth fast enough. And so my brain is just always working in an overdrive.
Mm.
So like listening and watching it slowed down all the thoughts and contain them to kind of like, I'm not going to say just one train of thought, but like minimal trains of thought. So it's not like going in 50,000 different directions. It kind of like focused and calmed down the noise in the brain, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it had a calming effect to the brain. That's very fascinating. I'm always interested in the psychology of music. So thank you for sharing that. So now
Absolutely.
we're going to go to our discussion point, and I want to open the discussion addressing that one thing that I said I will debate you on a little bit, Jess.
Oh,
So
sure. Okay, let's
I'd
go.
like to
Bring it.
just counter it for a moment, and then I definitely want
Sure.
to hear your perspective. And if Ayla wants to be the moderator or as
Sure.
well, it's fine. But I did want to give some credit to people who are doing things now in a very innovative way in the
Yeah, I
Catholic
would
Church
love to
because
hear
I
about
think
that,
it's very
honestly.
important. So, as far as acting potency, of course, innovation, in my view, happens when the subject moves from the capacity to affect change to act, so the realization of something new. And as far as in my opinion, a truly innovative cultural work has to have new uh, material, formal, or efficient and final cost, which means it has to really be completely effective and exploring new ways of doing things. So that's my premise. And as far as the church, Catholic Church is a custodian for the fullness of beauty, as far as their point of view, it does exercise often a unique participation in creative arts. So, as far as some of the works and some of the things that the Catholic Church has done, even just we'll just talk about this year only. Um, I'll just share a few works that have been internationally acclaimed. So, of course, in my opinion, too, any agent that repeatedly actualizes projects exhibiting new, formal, and efficient causes in the arts is truly innovative. So it has to be something that really impacted the art scene. That's where I'm coming from. So as far as some truly innovative arts, we have Opera Aperta, which happened at the 19th Venice Architecture Biennale. And for this, the highlight was it positions architecture as a living participatory performance, merging architecture and art with a public co-creation aspect. So the Vatican put this into the work. Some Catholics put that into the work. And second piece is the AI-inspired Jubilee art exhibit that's on right now, which also the Cardinals even had VR and experienced this AI-generated artwork. And you can go there to the Jubilee, which is happening in Rome right now, because this is a Jubilee year, and you can experience this AI art, which forges this new interplay of sacred tradition and cutting edge media. Super cool, actually. Another piece that I want to talk about is the Vatican AI services for St. Peter's Basilica. So in this case, very interesting, it has 3D AI-powered replica and interactive website for St. Peter's Basilica, which is super cool. And it rematerializes the ancient architecture for global access in case people can't go there. So it lets people to experience in AI way the St. Peter's Basilica, which is super cool. And there's also, I don't know if you heard about it, but it's the Catholic Music Awards is here. And this is the first year of it. And it's considered the inaugural Grammys of Catholic music to recognize
I love
and
that.
incentivize creative excellence across multiple languages. And it celebrates the arts. Then their last one, which is kind of funny, is called the Let's Sing with the Pope video series. It sounds cheesy, but actually the Pontifical Institute of Sacred Music gives short tutorials on Gregorian chant, and it's very interesting. And they've distributed it across the social media platforms. And again, the dicastery of different dicasteries of the Catholic Church have been commissioning new art. And so it's especially cool because it's a Jubilee year. So there's been conferences as well on every sector of society. Recently, they had one for musicians. There's going to be one for digital art and media. There was one for entrepreneurship. There was one for performing arts. So they're offering conferences and ways for people to connect with art, with culture, and with their different sectors in alignment to their worldview, which I think is really cutting edge and super cool because I would say, I don't know if Protestants do this, they probably do, but it's really cool to have every sector of society represented in terms of conferences and also as far as giving people tools and resources to produce cutting edge content or even just to learn more about their area through the art. And this is not just happening in Europe. I just gave you a few that were related to what the Vatican and Rome itself is doing, but all over the world, I've been seeing really interesting new art exhibitions. As far as dance, I've seen some super cool stuff, different art forms. So I think from my view, it's like I kind of have a more global point of view of it. I'm not just looking at one particular continent. And I would say, yes, while a lot of things are happening in global south, there are still things happening, for example, Spain, putting out a ton of new work. lots of different places are putting on new works. So that's just what I wanted to say for that.
No, I don't really have anything to disagree on. I do think that my perspective is because I am also just coming back to even being plugged into the Catholic zeitgeist
Mm.
after many years. I That's another story for another day.
That's
However,
fair.
I'm like, and I think it's because of my grandmother was very devout, and I always like kept sort of some connection to my Catholic upbringing because of respect for her. So
Mm.
I I don't know. So it's like a maybe that's a Catholic guilt thing. That's like my grandma, like 'cause I imagine her. I'm like, oh, I want her to just like not be upset. So
That's
definitely
fair.
Catholic guilt driven, like the joke that Ayla mentioned. But also, yeah, I love learning that, and I would love to hear that more because I do think there was a point in the end of the 20th century, early 20 for like the early 2000s where I mean, Pope Francis really like shook things up, and I think that
Yeah.
was really cool. So that's
Yeah,
really
but
brought a
this
lot
is
of change.
happening like I would say, yes, Pope Francis innovated a ton, and I respect him for that. Rest in peace. But there also has been a constant, especially in performing arts, there has been, in visual arts, there's always been constant innovation in terms of performing arts and culture because of the principles as far as that.
I
But
just
maybe not
think
in
for
every,
me, yeah, sorry.
I'm just saying probably not in every region though.
Yeah, so for me, I guess it depends on how we define innovation. I do think it's great that there are performing arts pieces that are contemporary, that different reinterpretations. But for me, what I mean by innovation is
No, I mean, these are
just,
completely new works. These are not reinterpretations. It's completely new works.
oh, okay.
Yes, everything I
That's
mentioned
what
to
I
you is
want to
completely new
see.
works.
Yeah,
Everything is
that's
completely
amazing.
new.
Okay.
Yeah, and they've won
So
awards
I'll
too.
have to check that out. I'll have to
Yeah.
check it out because I'm not properly, I would have to see. That's really cool. So yeah, that's what I mean by innovation because if you think about like medieval, like I just think like the those that when that music was being made, like the music we saw and listened to, those hymns, I mean, they're beautiful and they're so worth preserving. Like, let's keep it going. It's like I would rather show it to more people because it's so cool. I but when they were made, like at the time that those hymns were being written and made, it's like I also think, yeah, like I think at the time, let me rephrase that. At the time that these hymns were being written and the type of music was being made, a lot of this, the Catholic Church was a huge patron of the arts, so it was specifically being commissioned. So a lot of artistic innovation just incidentally came because that's how they were able to get the space to like make art. And in those times. And I think they were just coming from a place of like, let's just blow people's minds and make something. And they gave us all this money and this creative freedom. And
Right, and
let's
they still
like
do that.
make,
They still put a lot of money
and
into it.
yeah, of course. And I think there's also just, and I also think if we're looking at the most, a lot of like actual Catholics themselves, just people everyday life, um, I do think, especially because a lot of Catholic schools in the US are losing money and they're closing. I think Catholic education was is such a key component about how of is such a key component. Sorry, Catholic education is such a key component of keeping Catholic culture alive and keeping Catholics educated about all the different art and the history and the principles and all the things and the liturgy. So I think with the decline of the funding for Catholic education, um,
Again, that's regional too.
there's almost like that. It's very much at risk right now
It's regional.
in the
That's a
U.S.,
regional.
in North
Yeah,
America,
yeah, that's fair.
and probably Europe too. Yeah.
Depending on where in Europe. Northern Europe for sure, because they're not even funding the arts properly. But in Southern Europe,
Yeah.
it's still very strong. So it's, yeah,
Yes.
but I could see where you're coming from there. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's very, then thank you for sharing that point of view too, because for me, I'm a person that's sharing more from like I'm looking at everything as a big picture kind of person. And so, yeah, everyone's
Yes.
ability is differently.
I say
Great.
to me, like, same. I'm also a big picture person, and I do like that. But even so, we still bring our own nuances to the discussion.
100%. So is there any other point that you guys would like to discuss or debate from what we have shared today? Feel free. I just wanted to clarify that thing because I was like, oh, I forgot to mention that. Anyway,
Personally, on
Ayla,
my end, I feel like I've discussed everything on my end and asked the questions I wanted to ask.
okay, great. And you, Jess?
Um, yeah, I'm curious what made you choose that piece and that interpret the Talus scholars? Like, what made you choose that one?
Yeah, so obviously because the composer was from that same, like studied under Tallis.
Mhm.
I wanted to show my appreciation for that for him because of course Tallis scholars are related to Tallis Thomas Tallis ethos and his principles of music and everything's a very beautiful and prestigious group of musicians, specifically vocalists. So for me, I was very keen to share that rendition because I felt like it gave homage to Thomas Tallis and his influence on William Byrd specifically. And as far as why did I pick William Byrd and why did I pick that piece? That piece for me is a very calming piece. It helps me to rest and it's actually one of the prayers that means so much to me personally. And whenever I feel that I'm in a place where I need a lot of grounding, it helps me to stay grounded. So that's why I picked this. And I also think that it represents what is the Vatican, but in a very simple way. It's not so like 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 some of these like big boom kinds of pieces that you're going to see if you go to go online. It's more going back to a simple theme, which is the core principles. And I think I wanted to just illustrate that in a very simple way. So that's it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing because that's cool. I like to know. Um,
As you know, I'm very picky about curation. Really.
oh yeah. No, and I think I also like that about reinterpretation, like different versions of things or reinterpretations or when I watch, especially like older things or what is it like open what is it when it's like everyone can old stuff. My God.
Mm, yeah.
I'm thinking of copyright, like when it copyright when it's like everyone can after 100 years. What's that word? Shoot, I
Public
forgot.
domain.
Yes, yes, public
Mhm.
domain pieces because again, it's public domain. So I do think the innovation and the creative expression is in the interpretation of it. So, or even live performances of things. Like there's sometimes I'm just drawn to specific live performances over others. And it's just like, I just want to watch that one. And because art is so organic and even especially stage performance, singing, music, theater, when you do perform on a stage like that, it's just you bring it's different every time. And it's just something that it's almost like you can't plan it and also you can't repeat it. And so that's what I like. I'm interested in I do like these different interpretations and like I think like why they exist and, what they bring to the
Yes.
table.
So thank you guys for joining the discussion section. I think it was very productive and I like this format. So now we're gonna go to section called news, trivia, and other. And this is where people can share any kind of trivia, news, things they found interesting. in terms of social media or a piece that you've seen recently or a film, whatever, just briefly share with us anything you'd like to
I
share
got
that's
something.
interesting in popular culture. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
So I had come across a piece of news in regards to um, a cultural piece of Sami culture. So, for those who may not know, Sami are like the indigenous peoples in certain Northern European countries like Norway, Sweden, Russia, even. And they have a very distinct vocal style of singing. I apologize if I don't pronounce it correctly, but I believe it's called Joik. And I've heard it described as being a sort of yodeling, maybe, but I don't feel like that accurately describes what it actually sounds like. And for those who may not know, that was kind of the inspiration for the music in the Disney movie Frozen 2. Um, yeah, like I remember like first listening to even like some tracks from the original Frozen was definitely inspired by Sami singing and Sami music. So this piece of news came out like back in April, so not too recent, but recent enough that there is this rare recording collection of Sami music, and specifically the Joik, and it has actually been designated by UNESCO as a sorry, what? Just a second. It was actually given the recognition by UNESCO for Memory of the World status.
Wow.
And
That's so cool.
yeah, it is. It's super super cool. And I thought that that was such interesting timing too because there was like this Sami Grand Prix happening the month before, and there was like a whole bunch of performances and songs and jokes that were happening around that time. So all in all, like I would say a pretty exciting period of time in regards to this specific art form.
Oh, that's so interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
So do
It's
you,
like over 100 years old, I think, these recordings.
that's so cool. So link to me in our Discord and then I can share that as a link on the
Sure.
thing. So Jess, what is your news trivia or other that you like to share?
I guess other is that I feel like as far as what I've been watching, there's a TV show called Severance, and
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
it's so good. Oh my God. And I
Yes,
found
it
out about it
is.
because I kept seeing things on the internet about it, like on TikTok, and I was like, I don't even know this show, but apparently the algorithm thought I did. So
That's funny.
I was like, I guess clearly I'm the target demographic if I keep getting this type of because it would be references to I'll be like, I don't even know what this is, but also it's weird and I feel like I'd be into it. So I just went with it. I was like, thank you,
Yeah.
algorithm. The algorithmic
Mm.
God, this is God's they thems. No,
So you're really
it's a
enjoying
really
Severance?
so the Severance. I want to read the book because it's a
Yes.
Japanese book. So, but then the series is from the US.
Wow.
I do think some of the actors are Canadian too, so it's like US, Canada, whatever. Um, so
Hmm.
it's very much like a dystopian take on corporate culture and work culture.
Mm.
So it's actually really cool to watch. And I just really like it. And it's also one of those very, very hyper stylized, like very symbolic, like hits you over the head with metaphors and literary references in the best way.
Hmm.
So it's really a fun, high brow, high intellect show. And I think as far as especially like TV series is, especially miniseries, though this isn't miniseries, there's going to be a third season. They
Yes.
really the type of storytelling that's been happening on TV in the past like decade or so has just been really interesting because I love film and I love a good movie. And I do think that TV is different, but I what it brings that a movie it sort of takes a movie plot and stretches it out and really lets you get into the psychological aspects. So it's very much like a novel. Like the novel is
Mm,
very the novel as an art form is very psychologically complex, and I think
yeah,
and film is
that's
different
true.
because a lot of films adapt novels, but they bring something more like visual. And I love that this like a mini series, a limited TV series or TV series in general, the way they're written currently, the ones that I've watched are very much like a novel in that they go in depth with, the inner life of the characters.
Mhm. Any outie. For the longest time, I thought
Any
people
outing.
were talking about their belly buttons.
Oh no, that's why it's so funny. Yeah. So the innie is like, so it's about Severance, the premise.
Definitely
I don't
not.
want to spoil too much, but it's basically like there's this company, Lumon, that is also kind of like a cult, and they have this program where people can sever, like go through severance is a procedure where you actually split your consciousness. So you have like your work life and your
Hmm.
not work life. So like the extreme work life balance. So you don't, but there's separate consciousness. There's like an amnesiac wall between the two. So the work self has no memories um of what happens in their outer work self, and the
Wow.
outie, the original, I should say. But the innie is their own person, and that's where it gets really interesting. So the outie has no idea what their innie is doing. They don't know what they just go down the elevator, a switch is flipped. It's very similar to dissociative identity disorder, or what that
Mm,
experience would be.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a very
Yeah, I
powerful
actually
word,
have been wanting
actually.
to I've been wanting to watch that show for a
It's
while.
really,
Yeah.
really, really profound. It's really
You've
profound.
watched it, Allison?
Yeah, I've watched several episodes of it. I haven't finished it.
Oh my God. I didn't
Ooh.
know. Now I just want to talk about it with.
Well, we can do that on a different one, different episode. But yeah,
I don't want
yeah,
to spoil anything. So when you finish it, let me know.
Okay.
yeah, okay. I may not finish it until probably later on because we're finishing a production cycle.
Or, yeah, if you tell me
Anyway,
what episode you're on, I'll know
where to
how
pick
to
up.
discuss accordingly.
Yes. So what I want to share in my other category is just something because I'm exploring a lot of different literature, different things. And so I've been finding a lot of interesting quotes. And
Ooh.
I was just reviewing Cicero's works and other classic people. So I just wanted to share one quote by Cicero that was kind of impacting me recently. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just something that kind of is like it's just in my mind. So this is one thing that Marcus Tullius Cicero said. He said, more is lost by indecision than wrong decision. Indecision is the thief of opportunity. It will steal you blind. I
That
was just
is
sitting
beautiful.
with that quite a while.
Wow. I really needed to hear that.
Could you repeat that again? I heard like half of it.
Yeah,
We can
sure.
edit the repeating of it out.
It doesn't matter if we repeat it because the audience needs to hear it again, probably.
Mhm.
More is lost by indecision than wrong decision. Indecision is the thief of opportunity. It will steal you blind.
Yep.
Well, way to call me out. Gosh.
Right? I feel like he called out directly like all ADHD people.
Yeah. Just also when I'm thinking of like certain things I'm pursuing or thinking about pursuing, I have this problem where it's like I feel like if I pick one, then I give up all the others, and then it's like, I don't know.
Hmm.
It's like which one do I commit to? Because I don't know. It's like I want to have options
It's
Yeah.
nice to have options.
for
That's
sure.
yeah. I also
Yeah.
love how it just worked out that each of us, the piece of trivia or news that we shared was like from different art forms.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think what sticks
No
out for me with
coordination.
this one, yeah, I love it. We should just keep doing it like this.
Great
Yeah.
minds think alike,
That's true.
as they say. The cliche.
Yeah, I think just the one thing I wanted to share about it is that, a lot of people get stuck because of feeling like they're gonna make the wrong choice, but sometimes the choices come and are revealed along the way. And so it's kind of
Hmm.
like when we feel our way around in a dark theater, you may have a little flashlight, but your blue light, but you don't unless you really know the theater well, then you're great. But if you were going backstage to the theater for the first time, you might not know. So you kind of have to feel your way around. And sometimes
Hmm.
choices are like that. So I was just sitting with that quote for a little while and it it really did give me some insights into a few areas. So that's why I wanted to share it.
Yeah. Love it.
Great. Okay, so we're going to go into our final thoughts and our little outro section here. So, does anyone have any final thoughts that they would like to share before we do our little outro about what we've discussed today, or anything that you might say is a takeaway for our audience to think about until our next episode?
Um, so it's not really takeaways from what we discussed, but I just wanted to hop on and really tell everyone how excited I am that we're back at this again. And I can't wait to continue this journey of exploring the different art forms from countries around the globe. This has been such a fun opportunity, and I've really enjoyed my time with both Allison and Jessica. And, I'm really excited for what the future holds for us.
Yes, I feel the same. And you, Jess, do you want to share anything with the audience?
I feel like Ayla said it best. I'm also excited, and I am excited to deep dive into some of the countries and works that I will be selecting, and just to see all the different interpretations. I think every week could be different, but we have a very clear like formula that's going to be really cool.
That's great. Yeah, I also enjoyed this, and I'm happy that we get to explore countries and territories, and each one of us will take a different country or territory to explore and to discuss with others. And we're definitely going in a little bit of an unorthodox order because we're kind of jumping around. So if there's a space that really is interesting to you, dear audience, you can definitely tune into those separately or watch the series. And we put it in video format this time because we felt like it would be nice to visualize different parts of our discussion. And I think some of you may be able to connect to it easier. And yes, of course, we are, as you can see, pretty rigorous in our discussion. But yeah, feel free to go and tune into the parts which you uh, find most interesting. We'll be going around different places. And also, just to clarify for our audience, we're not going to go into every single space for obvious reasons, mostly due to interest, etc. But we're going to go and hit quite a lot of different spaces around the world. So, with that being said, we have now arrived at our closing frame. And of course, each episode, as I said, is a curated encounter, a dialogue between tradition and transformation, personal insight, and shared wonder. And if something resonated, unsettled, or simply made you pause, then let the journey begin, because the inner journey or the thoughtful journey for you has already begun. And as we step away from today's canvas, our video canvas, that is, remember, culture is not a fixed portrait, but a living composition. It's one shaped by questions, perspectives, and the courage to look and look again. Join us next time as we continue tracing the lines between places and possibilities, one brushstroke conversation and debate at a time. Thank you and have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you happen to find yourself.